Dean Martin spotted it before he even registered the melody he was singing. A flash of metal. Not raised. Not aimed. Just there, resting on the linen-draped table in front of a man whose name you only whispered in Vegas. A name everyone feared, and no one said out loud. For half a beat, Dean's voice caught. The band kept swaying through the chords, unaware or pretending to be. The audience clapped on rhythm, then stopped, their applause dissolving into a tense hush as Dean lowered the mic. His eyes held steady, locked on the mobster's table. And then Dean did the kind of thing that turned ordinary singers into legends, or ghosts. He walked straight toward the man with the gun. To understand why that moment worked, why Dean could strut toward danger with a half-smile, you have to understand Las Vegas in 1965. Back then, the lights didn't just glow. They watched. They judged. They listened. The casinos were playgrounds for tourists, but kingdoms for the men who built empires in the shadows. The mobs didn't just run Vegas, they were Vegas. Dean and the Rat Pack, Frank, Sammy, Peter, Joey, knew exactly where they stood in that world. They weren't kings. They were court jesters who could be replaced at any moment. Sing, smile, drink, keep quiet. Those were the rules. Break them, and you didn't just lose your job. You disappeared. Dean had grown up surrounded by that kind of power. Steubenville, Ohio wasn't glamorous, but it had its share of men whose best friends were .38 specials tucked under their coats. His father cut hair in a barber shop that doubled as an illegal gambling room. Dean knew those types, the smirking threats, the casual violence, the way respect was a currency with sharp edges. Fear didn't sit well with him. Never had. But 3 days before the night of the gun, Dean's relationship with fear got tested harder than ever. June 15, 1965. The air backstage at the Sands was thick with cigarette smoke and perfume and the muffled thunder of an impatient crowd. Dean was flipping through a magazine, feet kicked up, waiting for the curtain call. His assistant Jackie, young and jittery, was sorting Dean's cufflinks when a firm knock echoed from the hallway. Jackie opened the door and froze. The man standing there didn't need to introduce himself. Expensive suit. Dead eyes. The quiet confidence of someone who didn't have to raise his voice to be heard. Dean didn't even glance up when the man stepped inside. "Mr. Martin," the messenger said. "Mr. Antonelli would like a private conversation after tonight's show." Dean lifted his eyes, slow and unimpressed. "Tell Mr. Antonelli I'm tired after I sing. Maybe another night." A single blink. The messenger's expression didn't shift. "Mr. Antonelli insists." Dean closed the magazine and stood, strolling to the doorway. He stopped inches from the man's face, close enough for Jackie to stop breathing behind him. "Tell Mr. Antonelli," Dean said softly, "that if he wants a meeting with me, he can come ask like a gentleman. I don't answer to men who send boys." The messenger stared for a long, uncomfortable heartbeat. Then he nodded once and left. Jackie's voice cracked. "Dean, do you know who that was? You don't just brush off Vincent Antonelli." Dean shrugged, already flipping open the magazine again. "I don't work for the mob, kid. I work for the Sands. And last I checked, the people buying tickets are coming to hear me, not Vincent." Jackie knew better. Everyone in Vegas knew better. Vincent Antonelli wasn't just connected. He was the most feared enforcer in the Nevada crime family. Rumors said he'd handled at least 12 bodies personally. The kind of guy other mobsters crossed the street to avoid. But Dean wasn't interested in rumors. Fear wasn't good for his singing voice. June 16th. After another flawless performance, the messenger reappeared, jaw tight now. "Mr. Antonelli is waiting downstairs. He wants to speak with you." Dean was untying his bow tie. "Tell him I already left." The messenger frowned. "You're right here." Dean smiled. "Am I?" Could have sworn I walked out 10 minutes ago. The man's fists curled at his sides, but Dean didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Deliver the message, Dean said. Or don't. Up to you. He turned away, dismissing the man like cigarette ash. Jackie nearly collapsed. Dean, please. You're pushing him. You need to talk to Frank. Frank can fix this. No, Dean said. I won't pull Sinatra into this. And I won't run when someone snaps their fingers. That's not how I work. But the fuse had been lit. Word spread through the sands the next day. Vincent Antonelli was furious. And Vegas didn't survive fury like his. Dean kept pretending everything was fine. But Vegas had already started holding its breath. The morning of June 17th felt wrong the moment Dean stepped into the sands. The place was never quiet. Slot machines hummed, drunks argued, dealers laughed through cigarette smoke, but today the noise felt muted, like the entire building was listening for something. Whispers followed him through the lobby. Cocktail waitresses glanced away too quickly. Security guards stiffened when he passed. Even the pit bosses, men who lived on nerves of steel, looked like they were avoiding a ghost. Dean didn't acknowledge any of it. He couldn't afford to. By late afternoon, the fear had grown legs. Herman Citron, his manager, stormed into Dean's dressing room without knocking. His face was gray, his suit rumpled like he'd dressed during an earthquake. Dean, he said, voice shaking, you have to take the meeting. Dean kept polishing his cufflinks. Herman, relax. You're going to wrinkle that nice suit. This isn't funny, Dean. Herman dragged a hand through his thinning hair. Vincent Antonelli is telling people you embarrassed him. In public. Do you understand what that means? It means he shouldn't send messengers. Herman exhaled like he'd been punched. Dean, this isn't Steubenville. These guys aren't barbershop gamblers. Vincent Antonelli is different. If he wants a meeting, you take the meeting. Dean finally looked at him. Cold. Unmoved. What does he want, Herman? There was a long hesitation. A dancer, Herman said at last. His girlfriend works over at the Tropicana. Apparently, she's been talking about leaving Vegas. Going to Hollywood. Vincent thinks you encouraged her. Dean blinked, surprised. I've never met her. It doesn't matter. Herman's voice cracked. He believes it. These men don't need the truth. They need their pride intact. Dean set the cufflinks down. I'm not apologizing for something I didn't do. Dean. I'm not meeting him, Dean said. Not in a basement. Not behind closed doors. If he wants to talk, he can come up here and knock like a man. Herman stared at him with something between fear and admiration. You're going to get yourself killed, he whispered. Dean smiled faintly. Not tonight. June 18th. The day everything snapped. Dean arrived at the sands around 6 in the evening. The air felt heavy, like a storm front had moved indoors. The hotel staff moved quickly, urgently, as if proximity to Dean might be dangerous. At 8:30, Jackie burst into the dressing room without even pretending to knock. Dean. His voice was barely a whisper. You need to cancel tonight's show. Dean glanced at him while adjusting his bow tie. Why would I do that? Because Vincent Antonelli bought out the first 3 rows. Jackie swallowed hard. Him. 20 guys. All of them armed. Dean. They're not here for the music. Dean returned to the mirror, smoothing the lines of his tux. Well, they paid for seats, didn't they? That makes them audience members like anyone else. This isn't a joke. Dean turned. One moment of stillness. Pure, steady cool. Kid, he said gently, if I run tonight, I'll be running for the rest of my life. Jackie's eyes glistened, but he nodded. He understood. Dean stepped toward the stage entrance. Behind him, Jackie whispered, "Good luck." Dean shot him a grin. "Luck is for people without talent." 9 p.m. The Copa room glowed like a chandelier caught mid-breath. 2,800 people packed the space. Tourists, high rollers, movie stars, gangsters pretending to be customers. But the air felt wrong. Dean stepped into the spotlight. A wave of applause rose from the crowd, then hiccuped, faltered, as people registered the sight of the first 3 rows. Dark suits, unmoving expressions, eyes like gun barrels aimed upward. And in the exact center, Vincent Antonelli. If a mountain could smirk, it would look like him. Massive, scar-lined, shoulders stretching his suit. His stare pinned Dean like a butterfly on velvet. Dean lifted his microphone. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sands. Hope you're ready for a show, because I know I am." The band kicked into "Ain't That a Kick in the Head." Dean moved with his usual effortless sway, but his eyes kept returning to Antonelli. The mobster didn't clap, didn't blink, didn't shift. He simply studied Dean like he was measuring a casket. When the song ended, applause thundered, except from the front rows, which sat in eerie, perfect silence. Dean let the silence hang. "Well," he said lightly, "I see we've got some shy folks in the front. Don't worry, I won't take it personal. Not everyone likes to clap when their hands are busy." A ripple of nervous laughter. Tiny. Trembling. The first 3 rows didn't move. Vincent's eyes narrowed. And then, almost casually, he slid his hand inside his jacket. Dean's breath hitched. The band missed a note. But it wasn't a gun. Just a cigarette. Vincent lit it slowly, eyes never leaving Dean. Then he made a gesture so quiet, so simple, the world seemed to freeze around it. A slow finger dragged across his own throat. The threat was unmistakable. The Copa room turned to ice. Dean Martin stopped singing, and 2,800 people forgot how to breathe. For a moment, the world narrowed to a single spotlight and the thin line Vincent Antonelli traced across his throat. No words. No theatrics. Just a promise, a quiet, deliberate vow that Dean Martin wasn't supposed to see daylight after tonight. The band tried to cling to the melody for 2 bars, then surrendered to silence. Glasses froze midair. Conversations died. People shifted just enough to feel the weight of danger settle over the room like a heavy coat. Dean stood at center stage, microphone slack in his hand, and smiled. A small smile. A dangerous smile. The kind a man gives when he refuses to crawl. "Folks," he said softly, "we're gonna take a little detour from the program." His voice carried through the still room like warm smoke. "Seems we have a gentleman in the front row who's got opinions." A few strained laughs. Mostly fear. Dean stepped toward the edge of the stage. Antonelli didn't move. His men didn't move. Only Dean moved, smooth, unhurried, as if approaching a heckler rather than someone who could have him shot before the next note. He crouched at the lip of the stage, lowering himself until he was eye level with the most feared killer in Nevada. "Well now," Dean murmured, "if you're trying to say something, friend, why don't we make it public?" He extended the microphone toward Vincent Antonelli. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. People clutched their partners, watching with wide, terrified eyes. Even the casino guards bracing the exit stiffened, unsure whether to intervene or pray. Only Vincent remained perfectly still, cigarette glowing between 2 fingers. He stared at Dean the way a wolf stares at a man who doesn't know he's lunch yet. Then the wolf blinked. Slowly, Vincent's lips curled, not into a snarl, but into something colder. A smile. The kind a predator wears right before deciding someone is too interesting to kill immediately. He laughed. Not warm. Not human. But he laughed. "You got balls, Martin," Vincent said, his voice thick and amused. "I'll give you that. You saying yes to the microphone?" Dean quipped. "Fair warning, the acoustics up here slap." A ripple of electricity passed through the room. Dean wasn't just cool. He was playing with danger. Teasing it. Testing it like a man flicking the tail of a sleeping lion. Vincent shook his head slowly. "Nah. You sing. That's what you do. And you do it good." Dean straightened, rising with easy grace. "Offers open any time." "Maybe," Vincent replied. "But tonight, you're the star." Dean bowed slightly in mock acknowledgement. "Then let's get back to the show." He walked to center stage like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just flirted with death in front of 3,000 witnesses. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dean said, gripping the mic stand, "let's give my pal in the front row a round of applause." Tough crowd, but fair. The audience clapped. Hesitant at first, then louder as the terror loosened its grip. Vincent lifted his glass in a slow, mocking toast. Dean launched into another song. And somehow, impossibly, the room thawed. A tension storm still simmered beneath the surface, but Dean's voice rose above it. Smooth, clean, fearless. A man commanding a kingdom built on shadows. During the next hour, Vincent Antonelli didn't take his eyes off him. Not once. It wasn't hostility anymore. It was curiosity, intrigue. A kind of dangerous respect usually reserved for men who'd earned their reputations the hard way. Dean saw it, felt it, and he let the performance sharpen. Jokes hit harder. Notes lingered with just a touch more swagger. He wasn't performing for the audience anymore. He was performing for the man who tried to intimidate him. By the finale, even the mobsters in the front row were clapping, slow, deliberate, their approval echoing like brass knuckles hitting wood. As the curtain fell, Dean held the final note an extra heartbeat, staring straight at Vincent, as if the whole night had been a question posed in song. "You want to run this town? Come take my stage." Vincent's smirk answered silently, "Not tonight." Dean returned to his dressing room with sweat on his collar, adrenaline humming under his skin like electricity trapped in bone. Jackie was pacing, pale, ready to collapse. "Dean, are you alive? Are you actually alive?" "For now," Dean said, loosening his bow tie. "Let's see if I'm still alive in 10 minutes." A knock hit the door. Soft. Too soft. Jackie froze. "Dean, don't answer it." Dean opened the door. Vincent Antonelli filled the doorway, alone. No entourage. No gun visible. Just the mountain-sized enforcer who could end the night with a single command. "Can I come in?" he asked. Dean stepped aside, and the door clicked shut behind them. Vincent Antonelli stepped into the dressing room like a shift in temperature, quiet, heavy, undeniable. Jackie nearly stumbled backward, but Vincent hardly glanced at him. His eyes were fixed on Dean, studying him with an unsettling mix of calculation and something close to amusement. "You want a drink?" Dean asked casually, as if offering a scotch to a dinner guest instead of a man who'd just threatened his life in front of 2,800 witnesses. Vincent eased into a chair that creaked under his weight. "Yeah, scotch. Neat." Dean poured 2 glasses. His hand didn't shake. Vincent noticed. They clinked glasses, no toast, no words, and drank. For a moment, the room held a dangerous silence. The kind of silence where something important is about to shift, and nobody knows which way the ground will tilt. Finally, Vincent spoke. "You know why I wanted to meet with you?" Dean leaned against the counter, one eyebrow raised. "Something about a dancer, I heard." Vincent nodded once. "My girl. She's been talking about leaving Vegas. Running to Hollywood. I thought maybe you put ideas in her head." Dean gave a small shrug. "Never met the girl." I know that now, Vincent said, swirling the scotch in his glass. Turns out she was talking about some casting agent. He's been handled. Handled. Dean didn't ask what that meant. You didn't survive Vegas by digging into the details of other men's solutions. Vincent took another sip, then set the empty glass on the table with a soft thud. But here's the thing, Martin. I sent my guy to talk to you 3 times. 3. And you blew him off. Made me look bad in front of my people. Dean didn't blink. Your guy came into my dressing room like he was delivering an order. I don't take orders backstage. A beat. A flicker in Vincent's expression. Not anger. Something sharper. You didn't scare, he said quietly. Not once. I don't scare easy. No, Vincent said with a low laugh. You don't. He leaned back, studying Dean with the attention of a man encountering something he didn't see often. Not defiance. He crushed defiance daily. This was different. This was confidence. The dangerous kind. The kind Vincent respected. That thing you did tonight, Vincent said, tapping the table. Walking up to me. Kneeling down. Handing me that microphone. You know what most guys would have done. Fainted. Dean offered. Killed over their own feet, Vincent smirked. Or begged. Or froze. But you looked at me like I bought a cheap seat. Dean smiled. Front row tickets cost a fortune. Silence stretched again, but it was different now. Not heavy. Not threatening. More like 2 men weighing each other on a scale neither could tip. Then Vincent stood. He offered his hand. We're good, Dean. You and me. Dean took the handshake. Firm. Direct. No fear. Good to hear it, Vincent. Vincent headed to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. But Dean, next time I send someone to talk to you? Yeah. Don't make the guy come 3 times. Dean lifted his glass. Deal. A slow grin spread across Vincent's face. He nodded once and walked out, leaving the room warmer than when he'd entered. By sunrise, the story was everywhere. Dealers whispered it at blackjack tables. Showgirls repeated it in makeup rooms. Crooners rehearsing for the late-night shows traded versions like it was gospel. Dean hadn't just survived Vincent Antonelli's wrath. He'd earned his respect. Performers had always been seen as accessories in Vegas, beautiful, talented, but replaceable. That night changed something. People realized charisma could be its own kind of power. A shield. A weapon. A force that even the mob couldn't strong-arm. Frank Sinatra called him the next morning. Dean, Frank said, voice sharp, are you completely out of your mind? Probably, Dean admitted. Vincent could have killed you. He could have done a lot of things, Dean said. But he didn't. Frank was silent for a long time. Then he laughed, loud, exasperated. You crazy bastard. Bravest guy I know, or dumbest. Still deciding. Maybe both, Dean echoed. Over the years, the story grew larger than life. People added gunfights, fistfights, escapes that never happened. But the truth was simpler, and far more impressive. Dean Martin stood face to face with a killer and refused to bow. He survived not because he was armed. Not because he fought. Not because he begged. He survived because he stayed Dean Martin. Charming. Unshakable. One man using nothing but charisma and courage to push back against the shadows of a city built by men like Vincent Antonelli. They never became friends. But whenever they crossed paths, restaurants, casinos, smoke-filled backrooms, they always exchanged a nod. A quiet acknowledgement between 2 men who had tested each other and walked away standing. Dean never bragged about that night. If asked, he'd shrug it off. Just didn't want a guy in the front row ruining my show. But those who were there knew better. They witnessed a moment where the spotlight didn't just shine on Dean Martin. It bowed to him. And on June 18, 1965, in a city run by dangerous men, the coolest man alive proved